Hey, it's Aaron, and this is a message to all the progressives out there. I know you're having an incredibly hard time right now, and my heart goes out to every single one of you. I know that you really want to get through legislation that will help fix people's lives, and that's a very important thing to do. I know that you're worried about the situation. I know that you're afraid of having 4 more years of Trump, who put children in cages, or possibly Biden, who is going to numb the liberal constituents and completely make them forget about all of the terrible things that led up to Trump. But I don't want you to get black-pilled, ladies and gentlemen. I want you to get angry. I want you to channel that anger, and I want you to direct it towards something that actually might help. Electoralism is a broken system. But there is an alternative to electoral politics. There is an alternative to having somebody making decisions for you that you could just as easily be making yourself. And I'm going to get into that closer to the end of this video. But first, we're just going to get into what happened last night. I got a long show ahead of us. We're going to be talking about a lot of things. I got all dressed up for the situation. Let's get started. So getting started, the very first thing that you usually do is you try to place some sort of blame. And we are going to place blame, but it seems like a lot of people are placing that blame in a lot of different places where it doesn't really deserve to be placed. Now, a lot of people are placing the blame on the boomers. The boomers are the ones that did it to us, ladies and gentlemen. The boomers are the ones that ruined the world. Well, the boomers overwhelmingly are having a tough time of it right now too, and they would benefit from all of the policies that Bernie Sanders would be passing as well. And it is true that over 40, the people in the over 40 category came out in overwhelming numbers to support Biden. Something like 70-something% of the vote was from plus 40 individuals. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're the ones to blame. So who is to blame? Well, it must be the black voters, right? I mean, there was an overwhelming number of older black voters that were voting as well, and they astonishingly went for the centrist candidate too. And they came out in extremely large numbers. So it must be their fault too, right? Well, again, no. Again, they would still benefit from all of these different policies, all of the ones that Bernie Sanders wants to pass. So clearly, the people counting the votes, they're the ones to blame, aren't they? They're just a bunch of inept, stupid people who have absolutely no idea how to do elections, right? It must be their fault. Well, again, no, it's not them. It has nothing to do with incompetence. There must be another person that we can blame, or another group of people. What about Warren supporters? They clearly, because of Elizabeth Warren, didn't go out and vote in large enough numbers for Bernie Sanders. But wait, it actually turns out that a lot of Warren supporters were going from Warren to Bernie because, just like all of you, they realize that this problem is serious and they want to change it. And the ones that didn't, well, they didn't because, well, it has to do with propaganda. Most of these people overwhelmingly support the policies and positions of Bernie Sanders. Medicare for all is at an all-time high. The other day, Bernie Sanders was able to get an entire Fox News audience to applaud raising the minimum wage. That's a big deal, folks. So then why is none of this working out? Why is all of this going to shit? Why is nobody voting for Bernie? Is it because Bernie himself is just an unlikable guy? Well, I mean, he's not especially likable. He doesn't brush his hair. He's about 900 years old, but he isn't necessarily unlikable either. The guy has birds flying down and landing on his shoulder. He has been able to amass hundreds of thousands of people to come out to his events over the course of the last few years. So it's clear that Bernie isn't necessarily an unlikable guy. So what is it that makes this system rotten? What is it that created all of these problems? Who is it that we should blame? Well, it turns out it isn't a who, it's a what. It's a system. Maybe, just maybe, it doesn't have anything to do with blaming the individual for a systemic problem. Maybe, just maybe, it has something to do with that system itself. Maybe it has something to do with the system that's in place that make people want to vote against things that would help them. Maybe it has something to do with 3 main things: media consolidation, voter suppression, and establishment collusion. Ladies and gentlemen, what's going on here isn't something that's new. It isn't something that we haven't seen before. In 2016, it was exactly the same results, but this time around, the establishment learned from their mistakes, and they actually came together at the last minute to completely fuck over the people. But that's important for them to do because the establishment has to maintain control. That's something that establishment people need, is control. And as long as they're in control, then you are not, and things won't change for them. They'll just keep getting better and better as they assume that they will, even though things are inevitably going to get worse for all of us, considering the economy literally going into free fall as we speak, and global warming, global catastrophic climate change, as I like to call it, coming in the next 10 years and making Earth possibly completely uninhabitable. Listen, let's talk for a second about media consolidation. It has to do with Noam Chomsky's idea of manufacturing consent. If you want to know why the boomers overwhelmingly voted towards Biden, the centrist candidate who won't change anything and who will put the electorate to sleep, this is why. Noam Chomsky laid out very succinctly why these sorts of things happen. It's because the news goes through several different filters before it actually reaches your eyeballs. The mainstream media has to make sure that all of the news that enters your eyeballs is filtered through a series of filters that make sure that the elites and the establishment and the people in power continue to hold on to that power. They get the raw footage and they immediately start filtering it down. So it's a condensed version, something that they think is palatable to the common public by the time it gets boiled down and presented to you from your favorite host at MSNBC. But you see, folks, every single one of those filters out anybody that might go against the mainstream narrative and filters in any of the mainstream biases that they might have towards the establishment. That's how this works. That's how this has always worked. We've seen this in 2016. We've seen this many times before. It's something that they always try to do. The establishment is basically the same thing as the World Wrestling Federation. They have their individual wrestlers, Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock, and they'll put them in the ring and they'll make them fight against each other. Joe Biden, Donald Trump. And at the end of the day, one of them is going to make the knockout punch, or make the other person tap out in a weird way. It doesn't matter. But anyway, at the end of the day, one of them seems like they win. But after that match, after it's all over, after the spectacle is done, they walk backstage together and they both go home on the same bus. The establishment is the World Wrestling Federation. Politics is a spectacle sport. It's not a real thing. It's something that is a grand illusion. Like I said, a spectacular created to make this spectacle that is here to distract you from the real ways of solving this problem. And there are actual ways of solving these problems, and I'll get to those in just a minute. But first, I'm going to talk a little bit more about those three things that I told you: media consolidation, voter suppression, and establishment collusion. Now, we've already talked about media consolidation. They all came together to support the establishment candidate that they wanted to take control. Now, as for voter suppression, how do they suppress the vote in the United States? Well, they do it in a lot of different ways. They actually spent years after 2016, and in fact, decades before then, making sure that in certain areas where there are younger people or more minority people, they make sure that there are less polling stations. They make sure that it's harder for them to actually get in and use their vote properly. They make it harder in all kinds of different ways, which is really interesting because a lot of people like to spout the idea that you should never attribute malice to something that incompetence could easily explain. But when the country is over 200 years old, when they've been running elections for over 150 years, when you are looking at the world's largest superpower, one of the strongest, most advanced countries on the face of the earth, and you're saying, oh, Well, they just ran out of ballots. Or, oh, they couldn't figure out how the app could work properly. Then that's just blatantly disingenuous. That's something that isn't sensical. It's nonsensical. It's absolute lunacy, because we all understand that all of these things are easily handled when the establishment wants them to be properly handled. We have over 1,000, the United States that is, has over 1,000 military bases across the entire world. And every single one of those is tuned to a fucking T to make sure that they're doing exactly what they need to be doing to further the United States' interests. On top of that, we have billions, hundreds of billions of dollars being going through transactions every single day through online banking and apps on your phone. So you're going to tell me that you're able to take care of billions of dollars worth of money that the elites are transferring back and forth every single day, not even to mention the stock market, but you can't allow an app, a simple app, to work properly for one night to count a few thousand votes? I'm sorry, but this is all not just incompetence. This is intentional. And when every single problem, when every single mishap, when every single misvote, when every single broken voting machine or busted app happens to give us a result, every single one of those results always seem to favor the establishment candidate. That's because it is supposed to. That's the way this system works. That's the way electoralism functions. Of course it functions to grant the establishment more power because, as many anarchists have said in the past, I'm getting so passionate here, if voting actually made a difference, then they would have made it illegal a long time ago. And a lot of people like to give me the argument, yeah, but then why do they spend so much time and money and all of this on suppressing the vote? Well, that's how they do it. That's how they rig the vote. That's how they make it so your vote doesn't matter, because the large, vast majority of people are not going to pay attention to some random dude in a pretty nice suit that they got from a Value Village, ranting on the internet about this sort of thing. They're not going to pay attention to any of that because they're going to be fed that mainstream news narrative that everything is exactly the way the establishment wants it to be. And don't worry, go back to sleep. Just ignore us, because we need to continue to owning and controlling every single part of the entire world. We need to continue to own and control the means of production and keep all of the people as isolated and alienated and powerless as absolutely possible. So how did they go about doing voter suppression in this specific election? Well, just to name a few things, Texas was a really good example, but this happened all across the entire country so far. Pretty much every state that's been voted in so far. Lineups have been more than 7 hours long in some places, making it impossible for people who have to go to work or have to go to sleep so they can work in the morning to actually stick it out and stay in those lineups so they can actually cast their vote. They weren't giving out proper ballots. A lot of the time they were giving out something called a provisional ballot, which isn't really a ballot that helps you get the vote of the nominee you want, when they actually should be presenting real ballots. So a lot of the time people had to ask specifically for the real ballot and not the fake ballot so they could actually vote, because you need to know to ask to not have a fake ballot in your election, because there's a fake ballot that they might give you, and you need to know that. Not only that, they were closing polling stations left, right, and center, and they've been doing it for years, like I said a moment ago, specifically in minority areas and places where the majority of the population is students or young people. People that would majority swing towards the leftist candidate, the majority swing towards the Bernie Sanders wing of the party. And of course, they closed the polls before everybody got a chance to vote. So they were turning people away at the end of the night because the lineups were so unbelievably long, thanks to their incompetence, that they ended up having to turn people away, so they didn't even get the chance to vote. Voting could be done on an app on your phone. You could literally do it in about 30 seconds on the break that you have for 15 minutes while you're at work, between snacks and then, going back to work. You could literally just click a fucking button on a phone and you could vote. But instead, they make it all so complicated. They make it all so muddled. They make it all so impossible, because that's the point, ladies and gentlemen. That is the whole structural intent. That is what they are trying to do. They want to disenfranchise the people that aren't in complete lockstep with the establishment, because that ensures their hold, their grasp on power. Have I not made my point well enough already? If I haven't, then go back and watch the video again, because I don't know how to make it more succinct. Here's the thing, and here are the hits that we need to get through. We can't believe that individuals in a system are the ones that are the problem. We have to understand that the system itself is flawed. The system itself is created in a way to make us fight each other instead of fighting the actual problem, instead of actually solving the things that are wrong with it. We shouldn't be out there blaming the voters. We shouldn't be out there blaming boomers. We shouldn't be out there blaming Warren supporters. We shouldn't be out there blaming the black vote. We shouldn't be out there placing blame on individuals who were inevitably propagandized to believe a certain thing and to vote a certain way. Like I said, the overwhelming majority of people want Medicare for all. They want a livable wage. They want to eliminate student loan debt. They want, but they won't get it because they aren't allowed to vote on those things specifically. They're forced to vote on a candidate who they have to hope and pray is going to give them what they want. But we already know that they're not going to give us what we want. They'll never give us what they want. They're going to give themselves what they want. And we already know what they want. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else. More for themselves and less for everybody else. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the number one problem with electoralism. And to all those people who are using the hashtag Demexit down on Twittersville right now, I understand where you're coming from. Ladies and gentlemen, I understand exactly where you're coming from on all of this. If you feel like you're being cheated, it's because you are. You have been for decades, and you're going to continue to be, because that's the way the system is set up. We have to subvert this system. We need to be voting on policies, not on politicians. We have to be working to subvert it. Wouldn't you rather be voting on policies rather than politicians? Wouldn't you rather have the people that are affected directly by those policies be the ones that have the most say in when those policies are changed and what they're changed to? We need bottom-up government of, by, and for the people, not top-down government for and by the elites. Every single one of us, if we were given the chance to sit around in our living rooms just talking for a few minutes about how this system is broken and how we could fix it, every single one of us would come up with a better solution than these syphilitically rotted brains of these elite, power-hungry monsters, because we only have one goal in mind, and that's finding ways to fix the system, whereas they also only have one goal in mind, one radically different goal from all of us, and that is to keep and hold on to power. We don't need electoral politics. We don't need politicians to be making decisions for us. We need direct democracy. We need liquid democracy. We need vote weighing, and we need democracy in the workplace. We need to spread out that power. We need to give it back to the people. Take it back from the elites and give it to the ones who actually need it and who will actually make this system and this world a better place. Politicians will not save you. The establishment will always cheat you, and the powerful will always find a way to keep themselves in power. We have to subvert this system. We need something different. We need something new. We need something revolutionary. We have to stop believing in electoral politics. Only we can save us, and we can't rely on some hero to fly down and do that for us. If you're angry, I understand that. If you're upset, I get that too. Channel it and fight back. Because those who make peaceful revolution impossible make violent revolution inevitable. So in conclusion, at the very beginning of all of this, I predicted that this election was going to radicalize people. It has. It has gotten people angry, furious, frothing at the mouth, and looking for some outlet, some way that they can find a solution to this problem. And ladies and gentlemen, and non-binary people alike, we have one. We've always had one. And we welcome you. To all of us that have been out there fighting that good fight, fighting for the revolution for this entire time, realize that there is going to be an influx of individuals who are coming in who are not going to know anything about what we know, and they're going to want to learn. We're going to have to be courteous to them, we're going to have to listen to what they have to say, and we're going to have to be gentle and welcoming, because they're going to pad our numbers. And a lot of the people that are coming are real well organized. And they're really smart. And to all those new people who have finally had their eyes peeled open by this establishment fuckery, we welcome each and every one of you. And I just want to say thank you for joining our ranks. Thank you for looking for a real solution to these problems. And I assure you that if we work together, we will find one. We know you feel cheated and slighted, and it's true. You have been your entire lives. The media and the establishment and the politicians have all lied to you since day one. It's time to fight. It's time to take back that control. And it's time to get into the streets. Direct action is what saves us here, folks. That is what changes this situation. So if you have a fire in your belly and you want to fight, then get out there and join a post-capitalist organization. Go out there and join up with other leftists who have that fire too. And make that change that you want to see in the world. Make that change that everybody needs at this point. Join up with the SRA, the DSA, the John Brown Gun Club, FNB, socialist, Marxist, and anarchist groups all across the entire nation and world, in fact, are waiting for your reply. It's not going to be easy, folks, because a lot of these organizations are really underground, and you're going to have to do some research to find them in your area. My suggestion is to get in contact with any of the less radical groups, your DSAs, your unions, and that sort of thing, and see if you can, from there, find the more radical individuals, and they'll lead you on the path towards finding those groups. And as far as I'm concerned, if you're having trouble finding any of those, or you want to create one yourself, or you don't know where to start with any of this, it just so happens that I have a video series called Praxis, and I'll link it in the description box below, and in fact, I'll leave it as an end card at the end of this video as well. So to everybody out there who's finding us for the very first time, we welcome you to the post-capitalist revolution. And it's time to start fighting. Solidarity, comrades.